Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? The Shadow knows. Hi, welcome to the movie universe. I'm your host, Movie Fan. Today's movie, as you may have guessed, is The Shadow. When I first saw this movie, I thought it was awesome. Sadly, it didn't do very well in the box office, but I'll get into that later. Before I can discuss the movie, I think it's best that I discuss the story behind the creation of this movie. The Shadow had originally started off as a comic book and a radio drama. It was very popular in the 30s right on through the 50s, up until the day radio dramas were off the air. It was a favorite show amongst everyone, from little kids to grown-ups alike. The Shadow was a character who had the ability to make himself invisible by clouding men's minds, as they put it. Now, technically, he could cloud everyone's minds, men and women alike. But given the time frame, they love to use the word cloud men's minds, so don't take that too literally. Now, what is clouding men's minds? Well, we would call it hypnosis. Basically, he hypnotizes you into not seeing him, basically. He's really there, but you can't see him because his hypnosis is so powerful that he appears to be invisible. And the only thing he can't hide is his shadow. In the radio drama, The Shadow had two main characters with him, Commissioner Weston and his girlfriend, Margot Lane. She was the only one who knew that he was the Shadow. The Shadow was played by a great many people over the years, including the legendary actor Orson Welles. It was one of the roles that helped make him famous. Now, enough of the history lesson. Let's get into the movie. The movie starts off in China in the 1930s, where we meet a man called Yinko the Butcher. That man will be the Shadow. He's killed a lot of people in China, and he's got a dark heart. He is kidnapped by a holy man known as the Toku, who offers him redemption, whether he wants it or not. He knows everything about him. He knows about his dark heart. He even knows his real name, Lamont Cranston. And after a very intense scene with a very interesting dagger, the Shadow receives his redemption. He trains under the Toku. The Toku teaches him how to cloud men's minds. Several years later, he's in New York City. And after a short period of time, we finally see him for the first time as the Shadow. And he is magnificent. He is straight out of the comic books. The red scarf, the big hat, the black cloak and trench coat, he's amazing. Just the way he was meant to be. And after a little bout with a few gangsters, he goes and meets up with Commissioner Weston, who in this case is his Uncle Wainwright, who is played by the legendary actor-comedian Jonathan Winters. It's at this point you get to see some of the Shadow's abilities. He even hypnotizes his uncle into forgetting that the Shadow ever exists, to tell him that there is no Shadow. And I love how they do this effect. You see a shadow veil over his face, except for around his eyes. That's the only thing that is not covered by darkness. It's pretty amazing to look at. And while he's busy hypnotizing his uncle, the lovely Margot Lane shows up, played by the beautiful Penelope Ann Miller. Of course, he immediately takes interest in her, and he realizes that she has a gift that she doesn't know about. She can read minds. He planned to never see her again, but fate has other plans, especially when something big comes to New York. What comes is Shu Wan Khan, the last descendant of Genghis Khan, and it turns out he too was a student of the Toku. Except unlike the Shadow, the Toku could not turn him to the good side. Like his ancestor, he plans to conquer the world. And how he plans to do it? It's pretty sinister. Along the way, we meet a few more key characters. Farley Claymore, who's played by Tim Curry, and Dr. Reinhardt Lane, who's played by Ian McKellen. And are creating an atomic bomb. I'm pretty sure you know where this is going. And in the meantime, the Shadow is still trying to uncover what Khan is up to, and he's trying to stop him. And of course, Margot figures out who the Shadow is. Now, the rest of the movie I'm not going to give away, but I will tell you this. It's very intense with some very amazing special effects. When the Shadow goes invisible, it's amazing to look at. This movie shows Alec Baldwin's true talent. He was at the top of his game. There is no one else who could have played the Shadow better than him, because he was right up there with Orson Welles. He was that good, seriously. So, why is this movie not so well remembered? Well, I think one reason is because The Shadow is from a different time period, and most of my generation had never even heard of it.
Another reason why I think this failed is a lack of publicity. From what I can remember, there was really no commercials for it. The only thing I ever saw was a movie poster in one of my local movie theaters. That's it. There was never a commercial, nor an advertisement, no nothing. So literally no publicity at all. And when you have no publicity for a movie, it is doomed to fail.
Also, I think some people just couldn't appreciate the art form that this movie really had. I mean, it was set in the 1930s, absolutely perfectly, too. You had the great cars, the great setup. It really makes you feel like you're in the 1930s. Meanwhile, you got a great cast of characters, and even quite a few sub-characters. And of course, the chemistry between Alec Baldwin and Penelope Ann Miller. That was perfect. Absolutely perfect. The way they performed together for this movie, you could have sworn that they really were a couple. They worked so well together. It was just like what you'd expect from The Shadow and Margot Lane. Even Shu Won Khan was good. Even though after this movie I've never seen him again, he was still good. Tim Curry had a few good moments in there. Even Ian McKellen had a pretty good role. His was very minor, but it was still pretty good. It's really a shame that this movie didn't amount to what it could have been, because it's really a great movie. If you haven't seen it, I suggest you rent the DVD or look it up online. It's really good. It's really worth watching. And if you're a big Alec Baldwin fan, this is a movie that you have to see. This is Movie Fan, signing off.